Finance.
Maria?
Right.
All right, I'm gonna call to order the meeting, the Finance Committee on Thursday, February 15th at 4 p.m. And to start, may I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, and a second? Thank you. Peter made the motion and Stephen seconded. Okay. You're more than happy to keep talking. You can go in the other room.
Sorry.
We're gonna get you when it's your turn, so we
Sorry
won't leave you
about
out, but if you wanna- that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Joe,
Aye.
thank you. Jeremy?
Aye.
Chris? Rob? Stephen?
Too.
Aye.
Denise, I, okay, good. I'm going to open it for public
Jeremy
comments.
still hasn't figured out how to work this computer.
And seeing no hands raised or in the room, I will close public comment. And then, David, Mr. Gray, you're up. And thank you very much for your patience and that you were able to come back again today after we didn't get to you last time.
Oh, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And let me pull everything up here and we can get started. Denise, would you like me to go through the whole thing? Do you have anything specific you want me just to focus on, or?
Yeah, David, so if you just like hit a highlight on a couple of the, maybe the achievements, because that's always interesting for us, is what you've gotten done. And then, anything over $10,000, right? So, if, yeah, because you have the most interesting job on Nantucket, in my opinion, so we'd love to know what you've gotten done this past year. I'm hoping that picture behind you isn't live, by the way, so.
No, it was recent, but not live. Yeah, well, we can start with some of the current accomplishments. The Surfside Road Area Project, the major infrastructure components have been completed. The big thing that we have left now is going to be the final road reconstruction, the bike path and crosswalk improvements that are all going to be taking place. And those are going to be taking place in conjunction with safe streets, school access, and some DPW initiatives that are going on. So most likely that's not going to take place until the fall of 24, where we can get everything in alignment and get new curbing and everything ordered. So, but almost all the other major infrastructure components have been done except for the road reconstruction and the accessory bike path and multi-use path crosswalks. We have hired a stormwater manager, and he has begun to get into writing stormwater regulations. We have completed a year one CMOM program, which was the capacity maintenance operation and management. We usually do those on sanitary sewers, but because of the age of the stormwater infrastructure and just having to get an assessment and an inventory of everything we had, that is going on forward. So we're trying to get that all completed and up into the GIS so that we have more accurate and sometimes live data going in there. Last summer, we installed a dewatering centrifuge. We had intensive staff training on it, and that's allowed us to have some much more efficient dewatering operations. We're no longer having to work 12, 16 hours a day to dewater. We're able to fill a truck oftentimes twice a day. So, and with some very nice product that's ending up out at the landfill. One of the other big things that we've done over the past year is we completed year one of our PFAS, PFOA testing of all waste streams coming into the Surfside Treatment Facility. And what this is going to allow us, and the data now is all being compiled and put into a format that can be easily read, is it's going to give the town and county a baseline that will help us to design and develop a roadmap for what further activities are going to be needed, and to determine where we go and how much more testing we continue. We are starting year two here coming up next month. Actually, at the end of this month, they're coming over. So these numbers are very valuable for us to be able to figure out what our needs are gonna be in the future. Are we gonna have to specially treat for this stuff or et cetera? And just an interesting fact on that testing is that we tested every source that came into this treatment facility, including the sludge from the Sconset treatment plant, all wastewater pump stations, septic haulers, carpet cleaners, landfill leachate, and any other waste stream treated here. That included doggy grooming trucks or mobile food units, the food carts and the food trucks all came in here. So we were able to get a very good picture of every stream that came into the department. I don't
Any
know if there's-
surprises, David, out of that?
Not necessarily surprises. I mean, we're all aware that PFAS is in a lot of stuff and almost everything that we deal with on a daily basis. We were able to kind of pinpoint some of our higher numbers, where those numbers are coming from. And landfill leachate was a high one, as was carpet cleaners, believe it or not. And carpet cleaners has to do with the amount of Scotchgard that's in rugs, carpets, upholstery and stuff like that. So those numbers were interesting to see. So it kind of gives us an idea what we have to target for those. And generally, I think the numbers kind of were in line with what we were anticipating across the board.
David, it's in the chemical that they're using to clean the carpets?
No, I think that the cleaner itself, I think a lot of they're telling us is biodegradable. I think it's what's coming out of the carpet and out of the furniture. It's all that that they call it Scotchgard, and there was another name for it too, but I think that's where it's all coming from.
Huh.
It's something you wouldn't think of nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it is in the wastewater, not in very high numbers, that we weren't surprised by any means, so. But it's to give Nantucket, it's so we can have a roadmap for the future, what we have to do.
David, what does that mean? What do we have to do? What do we have to do? What are we talking about?
Is it gonna mean in the future having to build or install some type of a special treatment to be able to pre-treat the waste stream that comes in? An example would say the carpet cleaners, instead of dumping directly into the process that they do now, would they go into an initial treatment system, carbon filters or something like that before it went into the regular waste stream? Would it be able to give us a roadmap? Do we look at PFAS destruction technologies in the future? There's a lot of them out there. A lot of them are still being vetted, but Nantucket especially, if we end up having a lot of any contamination, do we take and try to collect it, transport it off island at astronomical rates, and where would we go with it? Or do we come up with some kind of a technology that we could destroy it locally and reduce that waste stream down to something more manageable?
Does that technology exist today?
There are some technologies that exist. Yes, you get supercritical water oxidation. You have electrolysis.
And what
pyrolysis.
order of magnitude cost, capital and operating might it be to put such technologies in place?
We had some preliminary outreach about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And it was between $2.5 and $6 million just to get a pilot program going, to have a pilot come out, set up at the facility for a year, do all the studies and get all the data and stuff like that before you would purchase something.
Yeah.
Since we did that, I think there's been 4 other pretty interesting technologies that have come on board. So we're looking at, with the testing that we're doing, are we going to be able to pinpoint it to a specific area or a specific street? That's going to give us a lot more data. Do we find a facility, a hauler or whatever that's contributing more contamination into the system or not, so that we're going into the microvision now to find out where this is coming from.
Got it.
Joanna?
Hi, David. I know we've spent some time talking about this before, and one of the thoughts that I think David had shared the last time I had heard about this was that there's an opportunity, right, for some sort of off-island trucking company to come and take this and bring it back off island, or an opportunity to take trucks here that can gather this and take it away. How can we, or is there a way, I guess is the question, how can we either help facilitate that or participate in that, or how do you move that forward as a solution?
What's happening now is, of course, we're not the only facility that has this issue.
Right.
And a lot of facilities in the past year or so have actually closed down. There was some facilities in Connecticut that have recently closed. So some of these facilities that are taking their sludge, they're transporting it hundreds or thousands of miles to other states, actually, some as far away as Canada, for somebody else to dispose of their problem. The thing that is going to give Nantucket maybe a little bit of a step up is we're actually going to have some data that we can use to come up with, to give us an informed decision on how we move forward. Do we in fact try to collect it by tanker truck and haul it to Ohio, as an example, or something like that? I mean, or do we come up with a technology that's proven, that works, and do island destruction that would not only handle just wastewater, but we're talking some waste streams from the landfill, et cetera, that will have to be handled. And we could do something jointly. It wouldn't just be a sewer department type solution to destroy PFAS. It's going to have to be an island wide. It's all of us that are having to deal with this.
David, Peter Schaefer, I'm on the Solid Waste Committee. We've had a couple of proposals of people that claim they can destroy PFAS even out of your sludge and make it disappear by burning or whatever. However, none of them have operations currently in the United States. Operating elsewhere, but not in the
Yeah,
United States.
that's exactly true. We talked to one of those same vendors, and I believe one of their facilities, I think it was in Sweden, that's actually not even operational anymore. So they're trying. You know, one of the big concerns nowadays is what's coming out into the air. That's one of the bigger things that they're thinking, okay, we're destroying PFAS by extremely high temperatures, extremely high pressure, but what is that putting out into the atmosphere? So that's another piece of the whole thing that we're looking at. It's very complicated, but I think the data is going to help us to be able to sort out some of the complications.
Thank you. Okay, Maria, can you?
Just one more thing. So David, the data is going to help us. At what stage is the data collection or presentation? When are we going to be able to draw some actionable insights from this data?
The one thing that's come out of this already is the ability to, we've moved into a phase 2, and now we're looking at even type of a local or an isolated type. It's called foam fractionation. And what we did is we collected a bunch of foam from our aeration tanks, specially filtered it and strained it to see if actually the PFAS or the PFOAs are being gathered or collected more in the foam, or is that where they're concentrating in the foam? So those results have been sent off to the specialized labs that do that, because it's a little more than just a liquid. So it takes a little while for the results. It could be something as simple as collecting the foam off of tanks, the foam off of the leachate, and being able to collect that in much smaller quantities. And then maybe hauling would be more of a feasible option. But it's some of the testing that we're doing now it's pretty interesting, and it's a huge topic across all industries right now.
Thanks.
And not many communities are doing the testing. Nantucket's leading the charge and like we do in a lot of things. So.
Thank you. Maria, you can move it forward, the charts, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Let me see, I don't know where Maria is.
Yeah,
where we
he's
wanna
gonna, we're gonna go
start.
down to your extension page right here.
Okay. Yeah, the operational expenses, we try to stay as flat as we could. Not a lot of significant stuff on our operational expenses. Electricity, vehicle maintenance, sludge disposal cost goes up every year for us. And just other utility issues, so that wasn't too bad with our operational stuff this year. Our capital exemptions that we have here, one that we've been carrying now for a few years, just so that it's been on the, but is this the year that we have to pull the trigger? We just don't know. It's all based off of how Mother Nature takes and continues her path. Right now we're close, but we're not quite there yet. So it's something that we've been carrying for a few years because we know it's coming. We already have designs for it, for alternative access, for alternative sewer, water infrastructure. And we're working now with all the other utilities. So that's just a number that we've been carrying these years just because we know it's going to happen. Capacity maintenance, operation and maintenance management. That's the CMOM program that we've been doing for the past few years. We're continuing our work. The years that we've done all the camera work, now we're into the years where we're doing all the repairs and replacements. So that's moving along very nicely. This year we did Dover Street. We're going over to Vestal Street here in another couple of weeks. We did King Street and Sconset. So we're moving along now on the repair phases from the last couple of years. So that's moving along very nicely. The Somerset Needs Area Extension. This is in a nitrogen sensitive needs area. We have started to look at some designs options now. We have had some preliminary design come through. How we're going to do it? Is it going to be all a pump system? Is it going to be a hybrid system? Will it be mostly gravity? So those plans are in the works to move forward to do some construction out there. Sconset area sewer redesign and reconstruction. This is another one that we've been carrying along over the years. The infrastructure in Sconset is extremely old. It has, in many streets, has no rhyme or reason where it goes or where it's coming from. We have found municipal sewer lines going through people's crawl spaces in Sconset. So Sconset's a very tough area because the roads are so small, and they put almost all the wires underground out in Sconset. So it's everything, as we're finding with the Force Main project, everything is so tight. So Sconset is a big number. But there's a lot of stuff that's going to be done out there. Number 5, our coastal erosion, Surfside and Sconset discharge beds. This is so we can bring in our consultants and we can come up with plans on what we're going to do. Are we going to have to relocate beds? Are we going to have to pump inland somewhere? This is all being looked at in our different CWMPs. Right now we had an issue with one bed that was having a washover, so that bed has now been filled in to help slow down some erosion here at Surfside. This is just a stopgap. That's not a solution. It's just a way to prevent any more forward motion into the facility. And we have already talked to a couple of our consultants to look at that specialize in these shoreline issues. So we should have a contract coming up with somebody here in the near future. The Surfside Maintenance and Administration Facility. This was some supplemental funding. Initially, we were asking for 7 million. One of the things in discussions with the finance director and stuff like that, in order to come to this committee with a real number, we want to take and reduce this sum to a number that will allow us to be able to at least go out to the bidding phase. So once we get the bids in, then we'll know, instead of coming to you 2021, 23, 24, and just keep asking for supplemental, we think the best approach is to come to the committees with a hard number. So that, I believe this number is, I think we're gonna try to bring this down to, I think Brian's on here. I think we had discussed like 1.5, but I'll get that hard number to Maria, et cetera. But so that's what we want to do. It just coming to you every year, or every other year for supplemental funding just doesn't make me look good. And the numbers right now we're seeing at $1,600 a square foot for construction. We want to come to you with a hard number, so that's going to be our main goal for that one. The Hummock Pond area north sewer extension, that is that has to be done in contiguous with the Somerset Needs area. So in order for anyone, for us to do either Hummock Pond North or South, we have to have the Somerset Needs area extension in place first. So this is to get some more design in the works, and then go forward with any kind of, there's gonna have to be some easements taken for us to be able to run town sewer on some of these private roads. Similar to what we did with the Nantucket Harbor Shimmo project. That was a lot of work by John and his team at town council. The Shimmo project was an extensive part of, there was a lot of easements, and there's going to be a lot of easements in these areas as well. So this is to continue on with the progress that we're making there. Number 8 is we're looking to get a new dump truck to replace some of our older aging trucks that we have here that are really starting to show their age, especially the ones that we use for to help the DPW with snowplow and sanding operations. The salt, as you know, just destroys everything it touches. So this would be a replacement vehicle. The number 9 is to purchase a new loader backhoe that would give us the ability, an easier ability to be able to do a lot of work in town on town roads where we wouldn't need we'd have the ability to get a machine to a site by just being able to drive it over the road and not having to haul it with a CDL driver and a trailer and having extra materials on the roads. This would be a wheeled type excavator that we're looking at. We talked to a few different vendors on the state bid list, et cetera. So we have an idea which ones we want, what we're looking at, and that was in the packet. And number 10, as we all know, computers, usually as soon as you walk out of the store with them, they start to go obsolete. The same thing's happening with our SCADA PCs and all the programmable logic controllers that we have through both facilities. This is to come and have somebody come in and give us an assessment of what we have. We have a plant in Wisconsin that was built in 2004, and the facility here was built in 2008, and the PLCs and everything have no longer in service or are serviceability. So especially with the PLCs, which is a funny thing that maybe I'm too frugal when it comes to some things, is we'll find I'll hear of a treatment plant that's having a big major upgrade or whatever like that, and I'll try to reach out to those facilities to see what they're going to do with their old Allen Bradley PLCs. They're going to just throw them away or whatever, or can we come up and pick them up or whatever. A lot of times they'll stick them aside for us or whatever, and we haven't had to go out and get any. We've got some from the water company in the past, but I'm always have my eyes and ears to the street to see what's going on.
David, your own version of Tioli for parts.
Yeah. Frugal, or I guess frugal might be one of the words, but
Yeah.
We just have to be very careful because a lot of the old plants had the same type of technology that we have here now, and it comes in very handy to have friends in the industry.
Good. Thank you. Questions for David on any of the items he's talked about? David, one of the things that always strikes me every year when you do your presentation is how much you invest in training in your team and how they all kind of take a step up during their time with you in terms of the next level of operators. And you want to just speak very briefly about that and then we'll let you go?
I do. The training is very, very important for us. Especially in this field, where everything that we do is either 483 phase, machinery that could take and swallow you up and spit you out in a heartbeat. So all of our operators have to have very specialized training in order to know how to do lockout, tagout, arc flash safety with electricity, chemical safety, operating of equipment, forklifts, backhoes, and some of our very large specialized sewer cleaning equipment. Training is very important to me to keep these guys on their toes at all times. We, like a lot of other departments, have to have continuing education every year. It's 20 hours a year for our wastewater licenses, 24 hours a year for most people with their hoisters licenses, every 2-year cycle. So training is extremely, extremely important to us. And we've always worked very closely with water, fire, and the airport, because a lot of what we do as far as confined space entry, rescue and stuff like that, we're working very closely with the fire department, and we have a really nice program going on now with the fire chief, where it's all the different shifts. Every shift now is coming out. They're calling us and they're coming out on one day a week, and they're spending 3, 4, 5 hours here for the whole day to walk through the facility, so we can work on emergency planning. What happens if we have a bleach spill? What happens if we have a hydroxide spill, or if there's an electrical issue in building 4? Do they know where the disconnects are? So that has been super, super great, because we've had one crew come out now. We have another crew coming out on Tuesday. And by the time they leave there, a lot of them are like, we had no idea. So I'm glad you brought that up, because training is so important for us.
Thanks, David. Jeremy? You're muted, Jeremy, if you're talking.
Sorry, guys. David, I too remember last year being very impressed by how you manage all of your team and the training that you do and the retention of all your people. I just had a few questions on sort of the income statements. And I saw that last year your salary and wages went up, I don't know, 15% or so. And I was curious, was that just the normal course, or was there a headcount increase?
The last year was an extremely busy year for us with all the construction. There was a pretty big jump in some of our overtime. I'm trying to pull that up now just so I have the
It
numbers
was
in front
on
of me.
page 8, I think. Page 8 of the presentation.
Okay. And yeah, we had some people move around. We had a retirement last year. We've had we currently have quite a few open positions. We had a few people move off island, a few people move on to the private sector or other town departments. So this is one of the first years our retention has been probably at its lowest. But it tends to be a cycle in the industry, and right now we're at a low pace of the cycle. There was a large increase in some of our borrowings and some of the charges for service that had gone up. We have a lot of, I don't want to misspeak, I think Brian's on here, but some of our bonds and stuff and temporary borrowings that we did, I think came due, and that's shows some of the increases, and some of them were pretty substantial.
But just back to the salary and wages, which should be independent of the finance costs. It sounds like you're saying that a number of people moved on to different situations. You had a higher overtime rate. How many open positions are there right now for you?
Right now, we have listed for 9 positions.
Okay.
This is one of
And are
the
you
worst years we've had. We've only had
And what-
two applicants. One didn't come to the interview and the second one starts on, we have one gentleman starting on Tuesday.
Okay.
Jeremy, the
So-
change is with salaries is primarily due to the implementation of the new contract, which included one-time base wage increases and higher and larger year-over-year cost adjustments to account for the inflationary period that we were in and to try to get people closer to wages to actually live on the island.
Got it. Okay,
Thank you, Brian.
thank you. And then I noticed that your repair and maintenance cost actually rather unusually went down a fairly large amount. Went down about 9%, 8%.
One thing that we saw last year, which was, we hope the trend continues, is the big spikes that we saw during the pandemic. Some of the pricing has come back down to where it was originally. So we did have a big spike for a couple of years there. We now can get materials much easier than we could before. So that's one of the reasons why you're seeing a dip there. And thankfully, it was a struggle for a few years. Thankfully now, if we need something, we can call somebody and there's no big gouging going on.
Okay. And then likewise on your expenses, I know that last year it went up quite a bit, and then you have the identical number in this year's budget. If you're seeing a reversion to the pre-COVID sort of world somewhat, why is that not hitting the expense line item?
Some of the expenses that we had this, I'm just trying to go back here to my sheet.
Jeremy, can you repeat that for me, please?
I'm just looking at the expense line item of 277,000. It was the same in 24 as you've got it budgeted in 25. And that's up from 25,000 the year prior. And I was just curious, maybe just talk 2 seconds about why you think that's going to be the same, or?
Some of the things that we have been able to limit some is some additional equipment, and then some of the heavy duty OSHA training that we had. A couple of years back, we were really heavy on some training on new laws that came out. Now that some of the OSHA certifications last for 3 to 4 years. So there's a couple of years that we won't have to have those large increases in some of the big training costs. One of the things that we probably will see starting in another year is once we start bringing on new staff, the new staff's going to have to all be trained up to these higher levels. So it won't happen in a 1 year cycle. We're probably going to see that more of an increase coming up in another 2 years to bring someone up to some of these higher level credentials that we need. So
So the federal OSHA training causes little spottiness in expenses, is what you're saying.
it did, because one of the things that came out of the OSHA laws over the last couple of years is part of the requirement was they did not want you to have to rely solely on outside assistance like the fire department or police department. They wanted us to have most operators certified to specifically confined space entry rescue. They wanted us to have the ability to have that rescue training and ability to get someone out of a tank or a trench or something like that before support came to help us. That was big for us because of the amount of confined space entries that we make, and having to purchase specialized equipment, ropes, stokes, etc. So everyone now is trained to certified rescue standards. And they don't have to get recertified for a couple of years.
That's great. So Brian, I'm curious on that, the expense line item of 277 for this year and last year. Was any reason why that wasn't changed, or? And does the OSHA expense of training go through that line item?
Jeremy, I'm gonna ask Brian to take that offline with you so we can move on to the other items on this agenda, because we have several people here in the room that want to speak to some of the articles that are coming up. And so thanks for the question, and Brian, if you would just take that offline with Jeremy. Jeremy, anything else you want Brian to answer you on before we move on to the next item?
No, those were my questions from the review of the sewer budget.
Okay, thank you. All right. David, thanks for being here. Again, great presentation. It's always good to see you. And thanks again for your flexibility.
Thank you, everyone, and the open invitation still stands for anyone to come out anytime to see what we do.
Sounds good.
Thank
Field
you
trip.
all.
Thanks, David. Okay, so Maria and Brian, I think we're over to you now. Article number 2, appropriation unpaid bills.
I think Maria is going to,
She is.
okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. So before you, you have the list of unpaid bills. There's $44,693.17 in the general fund. Made up of the list before you. Most of those, could you scroll back up, Maria, a little bit, just to go through a little bit of the history of some of those? Most of those in the Department of Public Works is due to the transition prior to the new DPW director getting there, and some projects that were the current staff didn't have a understanding of where they, unfortunately, where they were. So the Beta Group is one of those that was doing some pavement management for us. We've worked with them, and they will be they've already instituted some more controls in place to not have those in the future years. Finance, the SAP America was for some training, which we were in a dispute with them over. Unfortunately, I take the hit for this. I didn't have Maria put a PO in for it to cover the potential cost of it. So that is my fault when we were in the dispute over the training with them. Health and Human Services, RICO and Thrifty, the majority of these, typically RICO sends bills in a very sporadic way, and I don't think that they knew that these were coming, and we unfortunately didn't make provisions for them. Park and Rec, Weston and Sampson was some work on the Park and Rec master plan that had been originally scheduled to be charged to the budget, and unfortunately with the staffing the way it was at DPW last year, they didn't know that this was outstanding. And police unfortunately had a few that came in after the cutoff for year-end encumbrances. So all told in the general fund, 44,693.17. Solid waste, unfortunately, ACV Environmental is for the solid hazardous household waste days. And again, unfortunately, with the transition, this bill wasn't encumbered in their year-end budget at the end of fiscal 23. We have talked to them, and now with Chris Lowe and Elise in the solid waste, I don't believe that we'll have any problems up there. And Sewer had a few, but David has already talked to us about these, and his staff has already implemented procedures working with my staff to make sure that this is that anything is covered at the end of the fiscal year. So I'm confident that this is one time and it's not going to happen again.
Okay, questions for Brian? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Chris made the motion, Peter seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call. Joanna?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
You? Chris?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Denise? Aye. Unanimous, thank you. Okay, Article 4, revolving accounts, spending limits for fiscal year 2025.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So as most of the committee is aware, we previously defined this list of revolving accounts, which are generally from user charges and specific to specific types of programs that we've already authorized in the bylaws. Every year we have to annually set the spending limits, which you have before you for all of these. One note is we did work with the airport for their revolving fund for the airport fuel revolver. I believe, Maria, could you just scroll down just a slight bit for me, please? For their revolving fund is a request for $6 million authorization, just for the committee's understanding. Once they hit the $6 million in the revolving fund, the remainder of that revenue goes into their operating fund.
Questions for Brian? Didn't the revolver get up to 9 million last year? Am I incorrect in that?
We did have to, so there is a provision to allow for an increase, if necessary, with the support of the FinCom and the select board, and there have been times when we've done that, and I believe it was increased, but they are comfortable at the $6 million for this. And I will say Jamie does a really great job with analyzing this and trying to get that number correct. So I have complete confidence in the number that she's provided.
All right, thank you. Okay, questions from anyone?
Yeah, Brian, what happens if oil prices go way up?
Well, if we hit the $6 million cap in terms of expenditures or got close to it, Jeremy, and that's a great question. We would be able to come before the finance committee and the select board and ask for the potential to increase the authorization limit on the revolving fund, which in some years they've had spikes that were unanticipated, and we have come before both the finance committee and the select board for authorization to allow that to be increased.
Okay, great.
Any other questions for Brian? Okay, may I have a motion?
So moved. Motion to accept.
Okay, thank you. I actually need a motion.
Second,
Okay, thank you. Peter made the motion, seconded by Jeremy. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll start with Stephen.
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jill, or not Jill, Joe,
Aye.
Jeremy,
aye.
Denise, I thank you. Okay,
Old Jays.
I know. All the J's are online. There we go. Okay, 24 appropriation waterways improvement fund.
Oh,
Thank you,
Maria.
Madam Chair.
Hold on a second, Brian. We're gonna have it on the screen.
Just give me 1 second, I'm sorry.
Okay, my apologies.
No, it's
I was
not-
so excited, I couldn't wait.
Neither can we, Brian, you know, these are our favorites.
Oh, gosh, here you go.
Okay, so the motion before you, has been discussed with the Deputy Chief of Police, who typically does this recommendation to us. I believe it was also in the, materials that were presented on January 27th. The recommendation is to authorize and expend the amount of $367,000 be appropriated from Waterways Improvement Fund for the purposes, as noted, maintenance, dredging, cleaning, and improvement of the harbors, inland waters, and great ponds, public access, breakwaters, retaining walls, piers, wharves, and moorings. Most of this has been used to make repairs to the town pier in previous years. I'd note that anything that is not used just reverts back to the fund at the end of each fiscal year.
Questions for Brian? Okay, seeing none.
Accept.
Thank you, Peter. You have a second?
Second.
Second, Stephen, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Peter,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Denise, I thank you. Always thank myself. Did you notice that? Article 25 appropriation ambulance reserve fund. Maria's pulling it up, Brian, so
I'm sorry.
look at Brian being patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as noted, this fund is used to pay for 7 full-time firefighters, EMTs, or paramedics. It also does pay for supplies for the ambulances, as noted, including oxygen tanks, refills, blankets, linens, bandages, and can be used for repairs and maintenance of the ambulances. We're recommending that $900,690 be appropriated from the ambulance reserve fund for the purposes as stated in the motion.
Thank you. Questions? Okay.
Brian, are those 7 full-time firefighters on staff?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Okay,
Hey, Brian, I'm just curious, what do we charge, what does the town charge when someone goes out on a call and has to use an ambulance?
There's a complete rate charge, which I will have the chief send to you, Jeremy. I don't know every level of charges off the top of my head, but it's all based
I was-
on that are approved by the select board. So I will send that rate charge, that rate.
I was just
chart.
curious.
Yeah,
great.
no, I'll send that to the committee.
Thank you, Brian. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay, may I have a motion, Peter?
Motion to accept.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Nope. Peter,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Hi,
Joe,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Not even gonna thank myself this time. Okay, Article 26, thank you, Maria. Ferry embarkation fee. Brian,
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're recommending that $200,000 be appropriated from the ferry embarkation fee fund for the purpose of public safety protection, emergency services, and any other purposes allowed by the law, applicable law. Just an important note for the committee, this is the 50-cent charge on the ferry tickets, not including commuter books. Typically, for the new members on the committee, we have used this to fund the CSO positions in the downtown core district. Anything over this 200,000, which this CSO program does cost us more than 200,000, is automatically reverted into the police operating budget.
questions?
and Brian, do we have about 450,000 visitors on the ferry boats? Is that about right?
There was about 450,000 eligible chart tickets that were charged, or for visitors that were paid. So we've collected about 220,000 last year in that, yes.
And so there was a discussion item at a recent select board meeting about increasing the fee
Correct.
following
That's
on
correct.
the vineyard. They were going to $2, and we might go to $1. What was the outcome of that discussion?
So the discussion was that they filed legislation to increase it by $2 to $2. And I'll let the town manager take over from here.
Thanks.
So they are asked us for comments. The legislation has not progressed and it can't be different for the port towns. It will all have to be the same. So select board discussed it. There was some concern that because the Nantucket ferry fees are higher than the ones on the vineyard, it could be more impactful to the Nantucket passengers and residents, especially those who may not be able to afford to buy commuter books all in one batch. So we're going to respond back that we may be willing to consider something less than $2.
Cool, thank you, Adam.
Do you want to say anything about that? Okay, thank you, Nat. Okay, all right, further questions? Okay, then may I have a motion?
Motion to adopt?
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Peter. Okay, discussion on the motion? Nope. Stephen,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Article 32, appropriation for special purpose stabilization fund for airport employee accrued liabilities. Brian, please.
Is that below?
It's
Is
32.
there, yeah,
It's
the
more-
motion. It should be, the motion should be to take no action at this time, in discussion with the, airport finance manager. It's been determined that they're not going to make a contribution into this year.
Okay. Questions? Seeing no questions, Peter,
Motion to take no action.
okay,
Second.
thank you, Rob. Look at that, another county heard from. All right, Jeremy,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Chris,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Denise, aye, thank you. Okay. Thank you, Brian. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Article 36, appropriation African Meeting House investigation. So the information that we have from the sponsor is that she's not coming to the meeting. And by default, not frankly pursuing this article at this point. Would be my understanding from the email that we got. Chief, I know you had a discussion with her. Do you want to? So, two things here. We can just go ahead and vote on the article. We had a lengthy discussion with the sponsor when she was here. Or we can also ask the chief to, because she did meet with Gail. And I think Cliff also went to that meeting and get her input from the discussion before we, with the pleasure of the committee. Chris?
I mean, I read the email and it said that they were quite satisfied with the meeting with, or she was quite satisfied with the meeting with the chief, which we expected.
Yeah,
And so I'm ready to, make a motion, but
okay,
if the chief wants to say something by all means, but I don't think she should need to.
okay. So what does the rest of the committee want to do?
Yeah,
Um,
it might be, personal.
Be in.
I don't know.
Okay.
So,
All right. Jeremy?
I would like to hear what the chief thought of the meeting. Just got the email and I saw the conclusion, but I was a little curious to the in-between part.
Okay, so Chief, what you ask, if you would join us at the table? Sure. Thank you. Basically just to not get into anything that might be confidential or personal in respect to Ms. Holgate, but just to answer Jeremy's question.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think without a doubt from the conversation, it was really clear that there was some frustration and sadness, I think, and a feeling of a lack of closure for the community as a whole, and certainly for her as well. So we talked a bit about that. I mean, that's hard, I think, for the whole community, for the police department. And I've certainly had many cases in my years that I've seen that have been frustrating, that we haven't been able to get a conclusion that everybody may want. So we kind of had that conversation. I also think there was just some confusion about the difference between the standard in a civil trial versus a criminal trial, and kind of what threshold has to be met in order to be able to hold people accountable. And it's a very high threshold in our criminal justice system, that we're all familiar with, beyond a reasonable doubt and probable cause, and kind of building evidence to meet that. So we talked a bit about that, and yeah, so just had that conversation, and that was really the substance of it. I think difficult and kind of painful for the community as a whole. And obviously I wasn't here and part of the community at that time. I've read about it and I certainly understand why that would be the case.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Okay. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do we have a motion?
Move not to adopt.
Motion not to adopt. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, thank you.
is she allowed to withdraw the article?
No,
Yeah, okay.
no,
So it has to be voted on regardless.
yes. Correct, John? She cannot withdraw the article. It's,
something at that meeting.
it's.
You're on mute, John.
You're muted, John.
Sorry about that. No, the article is on the warrant, so it cannot be withdrawn. It's going to require a motion to dispose of the article.
Thank you, John. Okay, the motion is, thanks, Chief. The
Thank
motion is motion not to adopt, and it is, any further discussion on the motion? Nope, seeing any. Chris?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Jeremy?
aye.
Thank you. Okay. And Denise, aye. Yep. Right. Okay, Article 72. John, Mr. Phones, would you like to join us at the table, and anyone else who wants to speak to it, also grab a chair? Heaven forbid you should be on the owl. So, John, what we've asked sponsors to do before is try to take about 5 minutes, because that's how much time you'll get on the floor of town meeting. And then, of course, we'll ask you questions, you talk more than 5 minutes, but for your introduction as to why you put this article in and what
Sure.
it's about, approximately 5 minutes.
Okay, and this is my buddy here, Eddie. He's more of an expert on the technical things than me. He's the
Right.
HVAC guy on Island here.
Eddie, what's your last name?
Lord, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. No, we just need it for the minutes. Thank you.
Yes, so I sponsored this article to try and help people save money now and in the future who are building a house or doing a major renovation. Under the existing stretch code, a home energy rating system, which is called HERS, is required to build a new house or 1,000 square foot addition or 50% of the house. A HERS rate to build a new house under 4,000 square feet costs $3,300, which is required before you can get a permit to build. In addition, it's substantially more costly to build under the new stretch code, which is pricing the working class out of home ownership. Never mind the cost for towns with low income housing that we are building. Sorry, that rope's coming. In addition, not having to build a sealed up unhealthy house would make more sense. With the stretch code now, we are already having to build sealed up houses. And that problem is only going to get worse as the stretch code tightens up. Being so sealed up, we have to exhaust the air from the house and bring in outside fresh air with mechanical ventilation. And these units have to run continuously using more electricity, which, as we know, is continuing to get more expensive. Stretch code is currently set up will force construction of all electric homes and will incorporate the use of heat pumps for heat and hot water, which don't work very well in a cold climate. With us being on an island and being dependent on one energy source is not smart. Once the outdoor temperature drops to 40, heat pumps start losing efficiency and they consume more energy to do their jobs. As the temperature continues to drop, the efficiency gets worse. Multiply this for the entire island and you can understand the problems we could have and the amount of electricity being wasted. Most of the summer houses that are empty during the winter leave their heat on now. It's not like the days of old when they shut everything down. So they were using electricity just as badly in these temperatures. Once a town is in the stretch code, whatever new code change or regulation is adopted, the town must follow. Right now, if you go all electric, you have to hit a HERS rating of 55. Or if you have fuel on the property, you have to hit a HERS rating of 52. And July 1st, those numbers are going to go to 42 and 45. If the town voters vote to go off it, we would revert to the base code. So there would still be a code. And the lower the number, the harder it is to hit. Additional points here is the code will force more spray foam insulation, which has its purpose in some areas when building a house, but it will force more cavities to be completely filled. And when this is done, you have to overfill and cut back out flush to the studs and stuff like that. And you get a great amount of waste that gets bagged up and brought to the dump. Some of this blows away at the dump. In both instances, it's not the best for the environment. In this code, if you install a gas appliance, you must run the equivalent electric wire for its future electrical replacement for hot water, furnace, stove, something. It's a complete waste of natural resources, not to mention the cost. And it's not going to be used. It's a wire there. So trying to force you for the electric. If there are power outages in our future, you won't be able to run heat pump furnaces with an inexpensive generator, which will be able to run a gas furnace with one, and probably a few of your neighbors. It'll be a $20,000 generator for each house. Energy efficiency is important, and we want to have our houses comply, but the extent this code embarks on are ludicrous and is not effective for the average homeowner who is just getting by with just enough money to construct a home for their families. Also, I'd like to point out that I called Lauren Sinatra, the energy coordinator, like 3 or 4 times and sent her emails. I got no response. And then I'd like to show you, me and Eddie, we have a HERS report. And if you look at the numbers, they really don't make sense. It's telling us here that this is for my own house. My heating is only going to cost me $1,500 a year. And my cooling is only going to cost me $9 a year. And my hot water, so the numbers really are out there. I'm not sure what they do. My hot water is only going to cost me $146 a year. It goes on, it has other items and stuff like that, but I can pass it around. If you guys want
Sure.
to see what a HERS rating, I got a few of them for my house, and Eddie has some for another job he did. So pass that one that way, but really, I don't know. I believe it's a little bit of lying going on for people that want to see something done. It all sounds good, but I don't know if it's true.
Okay, please, Eddie, go ahead.
So for anyone that doesn't know me, Eddie Ward, I've been working here in Nantucket in the HVAC industry for 20 years. And the idea of the stretch code, as I understand it fully, is about climate change and reduced emissions and doing things that are good for the environment. And I'm not opposed to any of that. With that said, I agree with John in all these areas, but what I think that we're missing, or maybe missing, is that example, this particular stretch code, HERS report that I'm looking at is for a project, one of my clients. Not gonna give an address, but so to put it in perspective, this is a 4,400 square foot home. And they're saying it's gonna cost $2,000. 2228, or $2,028 a year to heat it, cooling it $10. So anyone that's being persuaded to go to stretch code, based on these numbers, I think are, I don't want to say they're being lied to. I think that these numbers don't accurately represent what we're doing. The other thing that I'm really concerned about here, beyond the fact that Nantucket is already expensive, we're already pricing the working class out of a home. But what we're also going to look at, or what I look at, is stretch code goes so much further than that. And when it was first implemented, there were some basic guidelines that were great ideas. Once the town adopts the stretch code, as I understand it, any modifications we are required to accept. And with these new modifications, we're required electric vehicle plugs. We're required heat pumps. We're trying to go for full electrification. What this means to me is that we're not ready. So we have 100,000 people here in July and August, and we're all on heat pumps. They're great, they're efficient. Until we come home, we plug in the 50 amp electric vehicle plug, we turn on the gas, oh, I'm sorry, it's no longer allowed, gas stoves. We cook dinner with our electric stove. We turn on our electric water heater, or we take a shower, which turns on the electric water heater. The infrastructure is not here yet. So when we look at this and we say, hey, this is really inexpensive, this is a great program, they're very clean energy, all a great concept, but I think a lot is being missed. My proposal would be to table the stretch code for 3 years. Get some further understanding what's going on in other places like California, which has rolling blackouts because they don't have the infrastructure. I've been doing a lot of reading on it. I'm not going to bore you with all of this, but there's articles in the New York Times about rolling blackouts. There's articles speaking of the use of solar energy and the impact of solar energy on the climate and the increased heat loads. So we're trading off one for another. I think a lot more research by someone smarter than me maybe needs to go into effect before we, as a community, say, hey, let's do this, and it's too late.
Okay.
I think the last thing I'd like to say, I think that efficient energy is a better choice. As opposed to using a 90% efficient furnace or an 80% that's still available in some places. 95%, 96% efficient furnaces, things of that nature. Use the heat pump, but have a second stage of heat that is gas operated. So that when the temperatures drop too low, we're still able to heat our homes. Because what's going to happen when the temperature gets too low, with all electrification, you have electric backup heat that has zero efficiency. And now we have an even greater demand on our grid that we're not prepared for.
And a lot of these mini splits, the lowest they go down to is 61, so that people leave them 61 all winter long.
I've asked the committee for questions, and I have a few questions. So, Peter?
When this was passed, was there a set date that was going to send action?
It was passed in 2019, and it basically went in January 1st of 23.
So if I go to new houses that have been built last year, I'm gonna see that wired, that extra wire.
No, that's new this year. That's coming in.
That's coming in July 1st of 24.
Okay, so this, if you're gonna make a change, it needs to be done.
It really needs to be done now.
Yeah,
It's gonna get tougher.
so what has been done, just in, I know that's dying, but what has been done so far in construction? That something different than it was before.
Well, for one, the HERS, you have to get a HERS rating now from a HERS rater to do, to build a new house.
And that's not bad. What they're talking about is the frog in pot of water. 2019, the frog, we've been turning the water up a little at a time. And we're about to hit it a little harder this July. That's what's happening. And then by 2030, they didn't even bring that up yet. 2030 is another whole thing.
So for
Okay.
the minutes, it's Nat Lowell speaking.
Yeah,
So-
hi, sorry.
That's okay. No, that's right.
You never lost your fastball, by the way, you're doing great. Who said she lost her fastball? No, I'm just saying, if anyone thinks that, she definitely still got it. So anyway, took me 5 minutes.
I think I'm
to
just
get
gonna
that
go home
out.
now.
So let me just
Carry on, Stephen.
try to say a couple of things. To sort of add to this conversation. First of all, for full disclosure, as a planning commission member and a planning board member, I voted to not adopt this article. Okay, now that's when you have two hats, and 3 and 4, when you have to sort of go along with something that makes no sense. Because you're sort of representing the town. Now, the town will be not a green community in 2 seconds, according to the stretch code. If we're out of the stretch code, all of a sudden we become dirty in 1960 somehow, which is ridiculous, but that's the way it's perceived. And we get about, what, 300 grand a year, I think, with the green community, which is like nothing, but that's.
How much more the taxpayers pay?
No, I understand. I'm in favor of what
Yeah.
you're doing. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to explain it from a much more, convoluted way of explaining it all, because it's a lot to talk about with this.
Yes.
If we all agreed, and this is gonna get into the building envelope issue, we still build houses wrong, and it can still pass. Like bad crawl spaces, open roofs, which is ridiculous. It still happens, okay? What Nantucket needs to do, and I don't know how this is gonna happen, because the state is telling us what to do. We should be taking a pause, as Eddie said. But coming up with our own, okay, this is what we want on Nantucket. We want the Yeti house, we want the tight house, but we want a hybrid house. We want that choice to have the heat pumps, which are fantastic now. My house is a Yeti house, and I'm telling you, it's scary how good it works. But what I have in a new house will be harder to do July 1st. And you haven't got into this mini split issue yet. They're actually saying that they want mini splits in a new house, which is unbelievable that is actually being proposed. That makes no sense at all. Mini splits are great for slab on grades, for add-ons, for supplement houses that have baseboard heat and oil, put them in now using way less fossil fuel. And you got real air conditioning, sort of window bangers that use a lot of electricity. But to say to put mini splits in a new home, it should be there's a lot of use for them in new construction, but not in a new single family home with a basement or a crawl space. So the other thing that I want to say about this code that is actually, it's got a lot of humor to it, but it's a full factual thing. You can have 1 million BTUs in your backyard and you don't get dinged on any kind of rating of anything. But you can't have something in your house without getting that rating
So
dinged.
the pool.
You can have a pool heater.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Or a
that.
spa heater, you can have a
Fire
big
pit,
gigantic massive
grill.
generator, you can have your fire pit that burns full orange flame, which is not clean, just so everyone can have fun around their fire pit, which I'm not against. I'm just saying that's what the truth is.
Yeah,
And you can have your full cooking pizza oven, all the stuff that people are doing now outside. But somehow, once you get into your house, all of a sudden, we flip the switch and become something different. There's also, and this is the other thing, there's gonna be, I don't wanna say ways around some of this stuff, but there will eventually be wiggle room somehow will happen, but that doesn't mean it's right. And I wanna touch on what Eddie said, and Brett got his own way of explaining this, and because they're all in the same industry. This is gonna make it some expensive for a middle class or low income, and that's all we talk about is housing on this island. Every 10 minutes, that word is being said by somebody, maybe every 1 minute. And yet, this is a rich person's code. And it costs a lot of money to build a house here. It's $1 million to build just a standard little house now.
And this is just adding more cost. It doesn't make it more efficient. You can make an efficient house with mixed fuel house. But this is more politics sort of push into the building code.
Okay, thanks, Nat. Questions for the committee? So I did some research because I know next to nothing about this. And I'll be the first to admit it. And my understanding, and again, everything can be corrected. I don't have any prior, I'm not, anything I say is wrong, correct me. So there are, in Massachusetts, there are 351 communities, of which 291 are designated as green communities.
Yep.
So that means they've all adopted this, 291. Have any of them stepped out of it after they've adopted it? If we step out of the stretch code, does that automatically take us out of being a green community?
Yeah, according to Lauren, yes.
Okay, and so we would have to be designated as a non-green community, because according to what I read, if we wanted to go back to the base code, we have to be a non-green community, otherwise we can't use the base code. So therefore, we have to become ungreen, whatever that means.
Well,
And
does it mean more than the 300K that's been tossed about, or what are the
and
other
so I can tell you
implications?
this, how much we've gotten in the last 3 years. So this has only been since 2019, number one. So we got in February 20, we got $139,340. And these grants are to help us reduce energy costs somewhere within our town infrastructure. So that's what this money is for. January 22nd, we got $160,988. And January 24th, we just got $177,160. So about 500K over the last, since 2020. Approximately, because I couldn't do the math in my head while we were talking. So that's what I learned about that. And I think Lisa is on. Hi, Lisa Sullivan.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, I'm your Green Communities Program Coordinator.
Yes, could you please
Be
give
the right
people
person.
facts besides what I just said, because it's probably not facts. So,
So you are correct. You became a green community in 2019. You applied for designation, you were awarded a designation grant, and you've had 2 competitive grants. I think the most interesting thing, you asked if anyone's rescinded stretch code. There have been 2 communities in Massachusetts that have rescinded stretch code. There are 291 green communities. There are 301 communities who are enforcing stretch code or a greater version of the stretch code. There's a new specialized opt-in code. There's a fossil fuel-free pilot that's going on as well that 10 communities are participating in. So you would be one of 50 communities that would revert to base code. And the one thing I want to point out is base code, Nantucket doesn't get to come up with their own code. Base code is the base code that the BBRS will come up with. It's supposed to change every 3 years, but they've fallen behind. You are enforcing with base code, or the 50 communities who are on it. It's a code that dates back to 2018. They're doing public hearings right now for the 2021 version, which is expected to become effective July 1, 2024. The stretch code is supposed to be a stretch beyond that, and it will be just that once the base code is updated. And I'm talking they're updating to 2021. We're still going to be a code behind because we're in 2024 with the base code. So I won't talk your ear off. What I do think is disappointing that this would even be considered in Nantucket, where you're concerned, you're an MVP community, you're concerned about coastal flooding, sea level rise. You have concerns about saltwater infiltration in your drinking water. There's concerns that someday people will not be able to access the ferry because of flooding at high tide. And what's that going to do to construction cost and supplies? You're dependent on delivered fuels like oil and propane. This is difficult. It's a difficult situation for Nantucket, but I think it's kind of penny wise, pound foolish. And something that also wasn't brought up is that there's mass save incentives to offset the cost of heat pumps. And there's also mass save incentives to offset the cost of HERS ratings. And that's all available to Nantucket. Anyway, I think it's disappointing to me that this is something that you would consider. And I think the Finance Committee needs to be mindful that as climate change occurs, and you are a very active community, you have a climate plan, you have a coastal resilience plan, an MVP plan. As you consider these things, think about the financial burdens that this flooding, 10 events since 2018, 7 of the most major ones actually since 2018. There were so many articles, I couldn't read them all. I just hope that you'll think about what the cost to your infrastructure would be if you continue to have climate change not be addressed. I mean, you're a community with 15,000 residents, 100,000 visitors a year, 7,500 housing units, and only 2,500 of them are occupied. So that means they're vacationers. And that's your huge industry, tourism and construction. I understand that, but towns aren't rescinding the stretch code at record rates. Towns are signing up to become green communities, and they're signing up to enforce code and not put on blinders about climate change. Thank you.
Can I ask who she works for?
Yeah, Lisa, do you?
For the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I work for the Department of Energy Resources. I'm your Green Communities Program Coordinator. That's who I am.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And you make, of course, lots of interesting points that are definitely worth considering. What I don't understand, or what I'm struggling with the linkage to the flooding to the building changes.
Exactly.
Right, so I'm just,
So, but
hold on a second, Eddie, Stephen?
Well, I think my question gets to that point, and I'd like to direct it to Lisa. Do you have information about how much more efficient a home that meets the proposed new HERS rating requirement is as compared to what a home might be if it met the lowest level of base code? How much less energy of any type? I'm a lay person here, so I don't know how to ask the question. If we're saying that a house has to be all electric here, how do you compare that to the amount of energy that's used at a base code compliant house?
Okay, so a HERS rating of 52 means that the house is more efficient than the house was. They're comparing it to 2006. So it's like 48% more efficient than a house was in 2006 on a HERS rating scale. There's also a HERS rater on this call. Andy Buccino is on this call. So you could ask specific questions about HERS, but climate change, we're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to further reduce you guys signed up for this. You also said that you believe in climate change. I believe that you actually agree with the governor's decision to reduce fossil fuel use to zero by 2050 and to reduce it by 2030. And so it's easier to do that.
But where does our electricity come from? Like our electricity
through
comes
underwater cables, and yes, more of it's coming from
where?
renewables.
It doesn't
more of it's
come
coming
from
wind.
underwater. Like it comes from a power plant.
It's also coming from a lot of renewable resources. You're very aware about the wind farms and what's going on with wind.
There's like 2 turbines spinning right now. I mean, I'm talking about like how much less greenhouse gases are we using if we do this? I mean, I understand the link that you're trying to make, but is it real today?
It is real, and it's compounding annually. What about?
I mean, like, draw me a picture. Where does electricity come from that serves Nantucket?
If I could dive in, I can. Okay. I'm sorry, Lisa. I apologize. But we do have that information.
Andy, I actually have to call on you. Sorry, for the minute. So it's Andy Buccino. Go ahead, Andy, and then I will go to Vince. Vince had his hand up, and then I'll go to Jeremy. So Andy, you go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To speak specifically to Stephen's question, we do have the metrics of what an individual house uses for CO2 from the grid consumption. There's a new standard called the CO2 index that specifically quantifies the carbon intensity of an individual home's impact against the grid. So we do have that metric, and I don't have it specific to any certain house that we're talking about here today. Though I am John Phones HERS Rater. I hope I can stay your HERS Rater, Mr. Phones. There's some things to solve, but I certainly think that we can all be on the same page. So I do have that information, and we as HERS Raters and the ResNet standard, the CO2 index, does quantify what that is to ISO New England specifically, which is where all of our energy comes from through the cable, and then independently across 20 other regions across the country through the National Renewable Energy Labs Cambium database. So we have that picture nationally. We have that picture very localized. And then, of course, we'll talk more nuanced and more specifically about individual houses, I hope, as we get through some of the broader climate change discussion here.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Vince?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Vince Murphy for the Natural Resources Department. I'm the Sustainability Programs Manager with the town of Nantucket. And this comes under some of my remit to some extent. And thank you for this wonderful and very interesting discussion this evening. One of the ways, and some of the questions that you're asking are very pertinent, but some of the ways that we to look at this in its most base level, and forgive me for oversimplifying, but this is essentially carbon accountancy per house. This is what is kind of the simplest way of breaking it down. And we need to know how much carbon is going in and coming out of houses in a very simplistic way. I've overly simplified it, but that's essentially what it comes down to. And we need to know, and we need to link it to climate change, which was a base question that was asked earlier. And I worked on this topic quite intensely in a very different way to develop the Coastal Resilience Plan. And this is what's going to, I'm sorry to say, drown Nantucket. It's carbon. Carbon is creating greenhouse gases, is a greenhouse gas, causing global warming, melting glacial ice and ice globally. And this is what's going to be the problem. It's not an individual community. Lots of communities are banding together to get into this, to get into green communities. Everybody's trying to qualify to get into green communities in order to be able to get towards stretch codes. This is a beneficial thing for the community as a whole. And each community that gets into it is increasing our chances of keeping temperatures down, preventing global warming. It is a base necessity. I'm sorry to be so blunt on these things. I know that people don't like to consider some of these issues, but we are a small little island sandbar that erodes and floods every time we get a storm, and they're flooding and eroding more quickly and with greater storm intensity. We need to try and find ways of being responsible as a community to increase ways to protect our island in a global consideration for carbon management.
Thank you, Vince. Jeremy, your question?
It's just an observation, Denise, and that is one of the great difficulties of any government is you often have issues that are global holistic issues. And then you have people who come up and they're single issue concerns. And I think that's really what we're faced with here. Just as a prior commentator said, this is part of a much, much bigger thing. And now we have a warrant article that really seeks to remove a few very specific things in the building code. And I'm a little uncertain how we resolve that in this, because it's rather, you get a lot of unintended consequences, and it can be very complex.
Thank you, Jeremy. Jill?
Hi, maybe this is a question for, I don't know who, maybe it's for you, Vince, or Lisa, but what percentage of our electricity in Massachusetts is generated through carbon?
I can have a very basic stab at this, but if Lisa wants to catch up afterwards, I had to look at this last summer, just kind of as a state level, to try and come up with some numbers for it. I developed a presentation. I'm furiously trying to remember that, but I have a memory of something in and around 55% statewide. But the important thing is that it's reducing. That's the important part here.
Well, I'm looking online and it says 74% is from natural gas. Only 9% is solar, 4.6 biomass, 3.5% petroleum, 2.9% hydroelectric, 1% wind. I don't know if this is right, but that's basically what's saying that we're from. So we are getting electricity through carbon. And I understand we're trying to move away from that. That's just, there's the part of that we personally can't control.
And that's part of the equation, but it's also about the efficiency of the appliances. You know, so like Vince, thanks for giving us the terminology. What is the carbon accountancy for a stretch compliant and a base code compliant house?
It's a good question. Andy is a HERS rater, and I know I overly simplified, but perhaps he's the person to really ask that question of, if you don't mind me punting.
No, thank you.
I'm sorry, my watch rang. Where are we?
I think Vince was punting to Andy.
Okay, Andy. All right,
You gotta
thank
tell
you.
us about carbon accountancy.
Go ahead, Andy. Thank you. Sorry, guys.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll pick that one up. I did post in the chat the website for ISO New England, which breaks down the blend, the mix of resources. It's 39% natural gas right now. Nuclear is still 21%, 12% hydro, mostly coming out of Quebec, from Canada, only 5% renewables right now. But again, 39% natural gas. In 2000, natural gas became really prominent in our grid here in New England. And so it is still operating with great strength in New England, and will continue to do so as it gets reduced and offset otherwise by renewables. Specific to an individual home and what that carbon intensity is, again, we do have the metric. I'd hate to belabor specific quantities of carbon without a chart or graph. I didn't prepare that. I frankly didn't know what the climate would be like here in the meeting this evening, or what the arguments were. So I'm glad to hear them. I think they're good ones. But certainly I can present something and put a very clear chart together for the Finance Committee. And of course, doing the same for the town is the objective, because we need to make sure that these metrics are digestible and quantifiable. I would, if I could, speak specifically to heat pumps. Let me say that the state of Maine is all in on heat pumps, having installed well over 200,000 in the past. 200,000 in just the past year and a half, with another, they're shooting towards 350,000 before 2027. So they do work in cold climates, and they work extremely efficiently down to low temperatures. The capacity changes as it gets colder, but they're still efficient, extremely efficient. I agree with Nat Lowell. I agree with Nat Lowell on one comment. I do really appreciate the blended use approach. I'm curious what the HERS rating was on Nat's home. I bet you it was around 45. I'm sure it was exceptional. I do appreciate that, but with the state moving towards eradicating effectively fossil fuels from residential construction, we can do that for the next few years, but it's going to be a state mandate that we won't be afforded that opportunity in residential construction. It's highly likely that is being discussed right now. So I just want to be aware of that, but I do appreciate the blended use and that propane being used as backup. I work with Eddie, or have in the past. I consider him a friend. One of the challenges around our summer community is that they leave the windows open and then call for service because the AC is not working. And that's a true statement. I think Right. So one of the challenges is acknowledging that John Phone's score or expected energy costs for AC is $8 a year. Let's acknowledge that. I know that that's not true. I know that that's not a real valid number, But
You got it as 10.
It's got his stamp on it.
Not even a day. Thank you.
Yeah, 9, sorry.
Thank you, Andy.
I-
I'm gonna go Joanna, then Rob, then Peter. So Joanna,
Muted.
she knows.
There we go. Okay, so I mean, some of my fellow board members were also on this committee when we voted for this back in 2019. And we asked some of these questions at the time. One of them, because I know Andy was there as well when this all got passed. One of the things that we did discuss was going to be what would be the impact to the building community. And I think that while there is a correlation between this, however you want to be able to define this in terms of how we're trying to unpack it in the context, right? I'm hearing a lot about the climate change piece of it, but in reality, what we're really talking about is undoing an impact to the building industry, right? And so that's the industry that this will most affect, relaxing this or stepping out of this. I think, Denise, your questions about has anyone else in Massachusetts stepped away from this designation? I think that is an interesting point, right? So if we're the only community asking to step away from an agreement we made, right, 4 years ago, what are the real reasons, right? I hear the concerns around the costs or the difficulties in meeting some of these requirements, but I think that this is a conversation about building and managing building on Nantucket.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. Rob,
I
you're
think
next,
just,
and then
well,
Peter.
to that point before my question though, is I think it's the fact that this stretch code is changing so dramatically might be why other people haven't responded to it, right? So it's, it's coming. And it's more impactful than it's been to date, right? But my question was going to be through you to Andy, if we could just quick overview of when you do the ratings. Does a gas stove and a gas furnace have the same impact on how a house gets rated? Or is there a weighting of the different appliances that are being used, or how does that work?
Andy, could you do how to do a HERS rating for 5-year-olds? Because that's the level I'll understand it.
thank you, Madam Chair. Let's look at a gas stove versus an electric stove, an electric induction stove. I think that's an easy comparison. And I'll get to the other part. They're nearly equivalent in energy intensity, but not in carbon intensity, if that's clear. So that they may use dollar for dollar, an equivalent dollar worth of energy, but the carbon's different. As far
But
as
isn't that just carbon at the source? Doesn't take into account the production of the electricity?
that's a true statement. Yes. So
Yeah.
so what's in HERS rating, the value of the gas stove versus the value of 95% efficient furnace? Of course, a furnace is going to use substantially more energy and more carbon to make its energy output. So they're weighted certainly heavier on the heat production side and the hot water production side than it would be on the cooking side. I don't have an exact percentage of what that metric is, but absolutely a furnace would be more intensive than the stove, if that answers your question.
So it's weighted based on the total expected consumption of each device.
That's right.
Eddie, did you want to even chime in a bit there?
Well, what I'd like to comment on this is that the concept of the carbon and climate control, climate change. So I've done a lot of reading on this, and I could bore you to death on the things that I have read on, but what it boils down to is let's take carbon out of it. Let's talk about climate change. So the idea of getting rid of the carbon that is causing us that, or the carbon consumption that we're creating a climate change. Well, okay, great, let's get rid of that. But what we're missing is that different articles I've read, different studies to replace this energy, we are going to use windmills. One article I read said that if you were to replace all energy sources combined with windmills, the heat created, because anytime energy is created, there's heat, there's friction. That heat would increase the climate by 1.5 degrees annually. Well, did we save the planet by getting rid of gas? No. Take that away. Let's go to solar. Solar's great. It's completely clean. We're not killing the whales. We're not killing birds, right? Sounds great. The heat generated, the surface temperature of a solar panel is upwards of 149 degrees. The ground around is nowhere near that. We're increasing. A study that I have here, I wasn't going to get into, but this article just states it's a great concept. If we were to turn the Sahara Desert, which is nothing but sun, into solar array, that we could produce enough power to power all of Europe. The problem with it is that the heat would change the global, not local, but the global weather patterns, because it's going to create a thermal drought. It's going to create melting the snow caps. It's going to create droughts in the Amazon. Now, is this accurate? I don't know. That's why I suggested tabling this for 3 years while further studies are going into it. We're trying to resolve one issue while potentially creating others. So yes, I agree with John on cost. Yes, I agree that I'm right that we're putting a substantial demand on the infrastructure that we have in place for electrical, but I also think that we're defeating the purpose of climate change and protecting the environment globally. So I think there's a lot more that needs to go into this, and that's where I think that there's mistakes here. Now, I do want to almost contradict myself, but not. When the one lady spoke and asked about where is our energy being produced, what's it being produced from, and a lot of it is coming from natural gas resources. Now, one of the differences is, and because I want to be open about all of the education and let you make an educated decision, and I do think that this is something everyone should read up on.
And speed up a little bit.
Okay. In a facility such as a power plant, they have carbon capture and ways to reduce the emission from that product that's not going to be in my home. So yes, using natural gas in that facility is going to be cleaner than in my home. But I think the bigger focus should be on using it less energy and using what we have efficiently. So
I just want to level set the conversation in how I see it in my head right now, which is none of us at this table can prove definitively that any of this impacts the climate or doesn't impact the climate, other than we generally believe on some levels, yes, it does. There's enough science out there to tell you that the storms are getting worse and these kinds of things. I look at this code that exists, and there's 291 communities that think it's a good idea in the Commonwealth, just saying. Secondly, what I don't love about it is that as it gets updated, we have to be compliant without a voice. And so the fact that it might have been okay in 2019 and we could all live with it, but what's coming in 2024 might be very onerous for us as a community, and we're stuck with it. So that's what I get stuck with in my head. So I really don't want to get into whether there's climate politics or not. I want to look at this and say, we have this code that we have to adhere to. Is it in the best interest of the island to adhere to it from the stakeholders who are most affected by it? And I still have in the back of my head, there's 291 communities that think this is a good idea. So who are also facing the same things, and only 2 have dropped out and not 100 have dropped out. So I need help
I think
reconciling that.
just to your point there, no one's looking to go backwards, right? We're not
Right.
saying go back to 2005. I think people are just saying, let's not go any further.
Right.
But by dropping the code, we are going backwards if we go that route, right? We're going back to 20, whatever it was, and then it's going to go forward again next summer to we don't know where it's going to go anyway, right? So
We're always, but codes are always behind. So we're always 2 or 3 years behind. We're always working on a code that's a couple years behind. So we're going, the 21 code is now coming in. That's what we're going on right now.
But it's, for me, even though it's a 21 code, it's a 2024 life. So I gotta work with that. Otherwise, I'm way too confused.
And the one thing that I think Lisa said, which she was saying that it's back to an 06, the HERS rating is 52. It's not, it's for the average US home today. It's not going back to an 06 home.
Peter had a question long ago, I didn't let him ask, and then I'll go to Stephen.
291 communities are using it and 2 aren't or dropped it. There's only one island that's 30 miles off the coast, and that's us. So I think it's irrelevant.
Martha's Vineyards adopted it.
They're not 30 miles off the coast.
No, but-
7 miles off the coast.
Yeah, I'm just saying they was all when I.
Really,
So what's the point of that?
And my point is this, I was down at the docks, by the Stop and Shop, the old Stop and Shop today, and I didn't see any generators. I didn't see any Tesla batteries being installed either. So if we lost power, there's still oil and there's still propane on the island, and it could get over here on a barge or on a barraq.
There are Tesla batteries, you know that, right?
Not enough to power anything
For
significant.
8 hours, they are, they're good for 8 hours.
My point is that in case of an emergency, we would be way worse off than somebody that's on the land or that somebody, anybody that's on the land. It's always different when you have to get it here. And you can't put electricity on a truck and bring it.
Right, but we don't, and we never have barged electricity here. I mean, an underwater cable is the same as an underground cable on the Cape. It's a cable.
Right.
So we're just as connected to the power grid as everybody else.
If we have one cable.
But do you think?
I think we have
Two.
2, and we're getting a third. I mean, the discussion is about what the date is of the installation, but it's coming.
I don't know, I just think it's.
That might be a 5th or a 6th then.
Okay, Vince and then Jill and then Chris. Okay, and then, sorry, Stephen's.
Yep.
Sorry, Vince, let me go to Stephen because I saw him first and, well, that's
Yeah,
fair.
and just to your point about being stuck in this code, if this is the train wreck that we're hearing that it will be, we can have the same discussion next year and every other year after. This can be the new short-term rental discussion that we have every year. Good point.
Future on the
I mean,
committee.
you can pull out at any time, like we can
Yes.
become non-green any day.
Yes,
So this isn't, we're not getting married here. In fact, we already did. We got married in 2019. We're talking about getting divorced and you can do that later.
okay,
A year.
Vince and then Jill and then Chris.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So a couple of points. This has been a broad-ranging discussion. Lisa has made the point that there were public hearings, so Nantucket can participate in the updating of these codes. So I believe our energy coordinator might have something to do with that. So yes, we have, and other people, it's a public hearing, anyone can go. So we have input into this. We have an avenue to follow to understand and influence how these codes get updated. But there's something else that's kind of a greater concern for me. You're talking about abandoning a code potentially that would then mean that buildings become less efficient, use more energy potentially, and we're limited by our 2 undersea cables by the amount of electricity they can bring here. So here's the question. If we end up in a brownout situation again, and we then can't build any more buildings, are we then persecuting our building sector in a different way by finding this limitation early on? So it's another way of looking at it, that we might be creating another limitation on our energy sector when on our building sector, when the real limitation is on the amount of electricity that can come to the island. So can we be more energy efficient and continue to build at the same time? That is one of the purposes behind stretch code.
And I guess I don't understand so pretend I'm building a new home here. I'm going to tell my builder, I want to build as energy efficiently as possible to as much as I can afford. So I'm not going to say, please put something in with leaky windows and, no insulation. I'm going to do the best I can. So I'm thinking there'd be compliance in whether there's the code there or not. But to your point, if, there will be people who will just say, I'm just gonna do it to the cheap and cheerful version and I'll get an extra sweater. First I have to go to Jill and then I'll go to you, Nat.
Yeah.
So Jill?
Sorry to keep jumping around here, but also, has anyone heard from, I mean, our restaurants and maybe Nat can speak to that since he services a lot of them, but they need hot water and they cook with gas and cooking on induction is very different. I lived in Europe for a long time.
That's up to Lisa, what they got planned up there in Boston.
So Lisa, do you have an answer to Jill's question?
It's gotta be inclusion.
I don't know what's coming in the future code. I know that the BBRS is working on 2021 now. And that the stretch code was intended to be a stretch beyond the base code, which is what the intention always is. And when you voted to become a green community, what you were saying is we want to do a little more. And that's what you did. The base code has fallen behind and DOER is, due to the 2021 climate bill, was asked to pick up the code. And so we've done that. So I can't tell you what's coming in future versions of the code because they'll have to draft it and then there will be public hearings. I did let you know in the chat how the code development worked for 2022. There were multiple public hearings. I sat in on them. Your building official would have been aware. And currently, if you're interested in base code public hearings for 2021, they're going on now. If you went to the BBRS, that's the Board of Building Regulation Standards, you would see where their public hearings are taking place. They're virtual.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Chris, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Joe, I'll come to you. Thank you, Chris.
I have a question, but then stuff I hear in the meantime creates 3 other questions and it's, so I'm trying to track on this. I want to go back to Vin's comment, make sure I understand it, which was, this would decrease overall consumption, but isn't it a shift toward electricity? And I thought you were suggesting that it would bring electricity down. Is that true? Because I think we're talking about shifting to electricity, or did I misunderstand?
If I may?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah,
please,
that's-
Vince, go ahead.
Efficient electricity use is the answer, Chris. So there would be more electricity use, but more efficient use of it would be kind of the way that I see it, or I've read into it and understand it. And then it would be a way of allowing effectively more energy to be able to be used in the same amount of energy to be used in a more broad way. That's a poor way of understanding it.
Maybe ask it, if I were to snap my fingers right now and bring every home on Nantucket up to this standard, would we use more electricity or less electricity?
I think by definition and open to being corrected, but yes, we'd use more.
Well,
Wait, one
okay.
conversation at a time. Sorry, Vince. Nat,
As
you
I
went.
understand it, we'd probably end up using more if we went backwards.
So we're accelerating the path to a third cable, not decelerating a path to a third cable. Is that correct? If
By
with this,
repealing this, that would be the case.
okay, thanks.
Joe?
No, he's saying something different than you heard.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that
Go ahead, Chris.
was my question the correct question?
Yes.
We are accelerating the path to a third cable, not decelerating
Yes.
as we adopt these
Vince is saying
standards.
we're not, but I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
No, he said, I thought he said it.
No.
I thought he said yes.
It seems like a third cable would be then needed sooner. Would that be?
Yeah,
fair?
that's what he said. He agrees with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's saying that.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
To replace the gas, to replace. the
Okay,
oil.
Joe, go ahead.
My view is that climate change is real. And it's one of those things that will be affected by a large group of people doing what the world believes to be the right thing. And for us to pull rudder, to me, doesn't make any sense. I am not an expert on climate change. I don't know the difference between the different things and the different types of appliances and houses. But climate change is going to require a lot of people to go in the same direction, more or less at the same time. And it's not going to be cheap. But that's the awful truth. And for us to pull rudder, to me, makes absolutely no sense.
Thank you, Joe. Any other? Nat, go ahead.
Madam Chair, sorry. All right, wow. I knew this was gonna happen, but I didn't know it would be this deep. And I do appreciate the conversation. This conversation, when they say there's meetings and we can do all this stuff virtually in Boston, nobody does that. We're working in houses, we're doing our daily, everyday thing. The people that are in this industry, whether it's HVAC, plumbing, heating, repairs, they're not paying attention to this stuff. I'm telling you, this is a sort of, you know, I don't want to use any sarcasm here or anything, but there's a different group of people making the rules for people like us. Okay, that's exactly what's happening. I just want to make a couple of points to add to what Steve said and what Chris said. Excellent. Every person born is using less energy than their parents, but they're using more of a lot of different things. You have in houses now, you have way more electricity being used for things that have nothing to do with heat, hot water, they're amenities.
Yeah.
They're stuff. Everything's plugged in. It ain't using a lot, but it's using more overall. It's like less is more now, okay? But now we're asking for the highest consuming electric appliances to be not gas anymore. And so if every dryer in the United States just magically switched to electric, and I'm including laundromats, you probably have a major electrical problem in the country's grid. If that could just snap a finger, okay? There was a big movement to push electric in the 70s on Nantucket. Now, I know it has nothing to do with climate change and all the stuff that we talk about now and make it all sort of where you can't even oppose any of this. You're supposed to just shut up and listen, okay? But we pushed it because they bought a gigantic generator that ran on diesel from England, put it next to those Coopers down there, and they said, here's all your free hot water heaters. And the electric company was giving hot water heaters away, okay? At that time, there was no propane over here other than cylinder delivering, okay, like by a dolly, okay? As gas came in to Nantucket, because there was no real gas here by truck until 1983, the electric use stabilized with gas. Cars, same thing. There's a lot more cars here driving around, but there's not more gas used, because cars get more gas mileage. So they're using less energy. We are not focusing on how efficient we've gotten over the last, let's just say 20 years. Okay, once we figured out how to stop putting holes in our houses, that's when we got efficient, okay? And Andy Pacino knows all this stuff. The poking holes in houses, it's unbelievable how many houses have wide open attics and crawl spaces, and it's freezing in houses that aren't that old, okay? But we're trying to go to Pluto in 10 minutes compared to catching up. Like Lisa's saying, what we're always catching up. How about catching up on what works, okay? Now, we haven't talked about servicing. We haven't talked about reliability. There's a big, huge thing out there with reliability. When you have heat pumps, stuff outside in the salt air, things break. There isn't going to be somebody just showing up in 10 minutes to fix this stuff. I can tell you that right now. I don't care how many service people are in the room, or there was 20 of them, they all agree with me about that. It's not going to work like that. The hybrid option is the answer. I understand the politics for the town is huge. I get it. I voted to not adopt this article myself at my other hat, but there's going to be, as Steve said, now Steve has said the right thing. This is going to blow itself up by itself, because it's going to cause a lot of problems as this continues, and it's going to reset like the stock market, like the interest rates. It's going to kind of fix itself over time. And I just hate to know that that's the truth, and we have to go through this for things to come back to a sort of a normal. Okay, I no one ever thought a hybrid car was evil because it uses a little bit of gas. Like, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's kind of where we are and where we're headed.
Okay.
Thank you, Denise, so much for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Andy, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the fascinating and wide-reaching dialogue. We've hit on just about every component of the global debate around climate change, but let's bring it back into focus on energy efficiency, if we could for a minute. I think this group in particular, and then town in general, has an opportunity to really lead. What we're missing is an energy plan. We don't have that. There's no one, and Chris has asked excellent questions. Stevens has asked excellent questions. There's no plan to support the conjecture around 1.5 Celsius global temperature rise because of solar panels that are in the desert. I mean, that's outrageous, right? So let's eliminate those parts of the discussion and let's focus in on what our buildings are doing today. I can say with good confidence and with great accuracy that we've designed and started to build over 200 buildings or units at or under HERS 45, which is the target of this new goal. Strangely enough, most of them are affordable housing. So if we're talking about underserved, that's the community that we need to start with. I'm not sure, Eddie and Brett, who are here tonight, what machines you're using for all electric buildings for affordable housing, but I know what they are using and what we are using, and I know that they work. Beyond that, 31 Fairgrounds Road should be held up as a fine example of what net zero looks like. They've got solar panels there, and whether or not people will suggest that the carbon intensity of the solar panels offsets any kind of reliability and net zero factor. But the fact of the matter is they're going to generate enough electricity to run those buildings. So let's improve that. I think this town needs to look at continuous improvement and for the long term as the real opportunity for us to respond to the challenges, and the stretch code and these buildings that we are building already and can continue to, with some propane in them, to Nat's point, are going to be a huge driver to mitigate the need for a third cable. It may not eliminate it. To Chris's point, if we turn everything electric today, we might need 2 more or 3 more. But through continuous improvement and incremental improvement through the cleanliness of the grid, and what is there an opportunity for our town to start making more electricity so we can offset that need? We don't know because the energy study is not done. So that's step 1, but eliminating stretch code is step 0. Do not do it. I think that it's a big mistake. I think we're building great buildings today, and everyone on this call should know that there's builders doing it at a high level now. And I would argue and will prove through town and before town meeting that we're doing it at not incremental cost increases in the cost of construction. And while we've been on this call, we're now using 41% natural gas ISO New England. It's gone up because there's no sun out and the wind's not blowing. So
get the straws.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Andy. Okay. I'm gonna do a time check here. It's 5:57.
Go first,
Hi, committee. Any appetite for a motion now, or shall we go away and think about this and potentially get additional information before we make a motion? What's the preference of the committee?
Can I ask them a question?
Of course you can.
Would you think about making an addendum to this instead of revoking it, changing it to a hybrid method?
Well, that wouldn't work in the stretch code.
So it wouldn't be part of stretch code.
Because
Right,
people
right,
who-
right.
This is why I said what I said at the beginning.
The people who are writing this
late.
they don't have any connection to reality. I hate to say it, they're probably politicians.
I like the concept of having the hybrid system. Let the heat pump do its job the best that it can, and then back it up with the propane.
And also, Denise, Madam Chair, sorry, the owl, this is my first owl meeting. I don't think we might have those at the right away committee, but I'm not sure. I want Andy, if I can speak to him through you
Yes,
on
of
something.
course. Go ahead, Nat.
So one of the things that is good, that I agree with a lot of the stuff in the stretch code. Like, I'm okay with solar ready roofs, I call it roof zoning,
Mhm.
that's part of it. I have panels on both of my houses and I don't pay for electricity at the end of the year. Technically, you're not really paying for it, you get bills and then you get little checks, it's kind of crazy, but it works, it comes out in the wash, right? But some of the stuff that's in this, they want you to have your roof to be prepared for solar, so it's got conduit up there, you don't have vent pipes from your plumbing in the middle of the west and the east side of the house. I'm okay with all of that stuff, I'm okay with even a car charger, if it's not having to trench a mile to get to the parking. Something required, I'm even okay with a bigger panel in your house. But the punishment side is the problem, okay? That's where I get like, wow, this is a big freedom thing. This is a property rights thing. This is gonna get into a lot of other things. Because there's things that people have had choices for a long time. And then we get into this whole boiler issue and heating your pool cheaper. Now you'll be back to, well, you can have your outside heating stuff that's less efficient, that uses tons of gas. I want people to use less gas. I want to use less everything. But this is a big shift in sort of a force and it's not a technological advancement and choice, okay? I mean, there's a lot of houses out there now that have like just fireplaces. They like the fireplaces work without electricity too. That's another issue that's gonna happen, that those are probably not gonna be able to happen. And that's there's a lot, this is as I said, the frog is just in cold water right now. It's gonna start to become known more about these problems. So I know, I understand that this is complicated to say no to. Or to say yep to the article, this gentleman has had the nerve to bring forward. But if we were trying to force no more gas cars in a certain amount of time on the ferry to come here, like, or some other thing, it would be thrown out of town meeting in 2 minutes, okay? But for some reason, this has sort of found its way without really too much pushback, because it works, but it's gonna get harder.
Okay,
And that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not even really
yeah,
trying to say that it's the worst thing in the world right now, even with July 1st, but it's going to get incrementally more difficult to do.
okay, all right.
So just want to say, so like a month ago in Alberta, Canada, they had rolling blackouts because they went over to solar and they went over to wind. They couldn't, and there was cloudy for 2 weeks straight. Solar panels weren't putting out and they didn't run the windmills because it was too cold, because they'll shatter in the cold. So they had in below zero temperatures, they had to have rolling blackouts. Do you want to attempt that and when we have a cold snap? That's a possibility,
Okay.
serious possibility.
Jeremy, then Vince, and then honestly, I'm going to draw a line under this and see if the committee wants to make a motion, or we're going to defer it to another time because we try not to run over too much. We can help it. So,
I think we may need quite a bit of discussion after the motion's made, no matter which way side it comes down on. So if you're planning on doing it tonight, I think it's probably gonna be an issue.
okay, so, well.
My
first,
guess.
Let me ask the committee first. Do you want to continue this at this point, or do you want to go away and think about it and come back? Jeremy, what's your preference? You want to continue, or do you want to go away?
I have time to continue, and I also think it's quite something to override, recommend and override what the town passed a few years ago. And it also strikes me that this is not necessarily the right way to accomplish what the building community wants. And maybe they should be doing as the one lady from the state agency suggested, is participating in the drafting of the new regulations and using that as a way. And then if ultimately that does not work because they're focused on what I characterize as single issues on something that is a much more complicated situation, you can still get back to what Steve says. There's going to be another bite of the apple every year.
Okay, thank
So-
you. Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Chris, do you want to continue, or do you want to bring it back?
I think as I said, I think we're gonna end up talking about it quite a bit tonight if we keep going.
I do
So
too.
I think we probably need to come back and I don't think it would hurt any of us to kind of reflect on the conversation as well and be thoughtful about it.
Rob,
I agree with that.
Stephen?
I'm ready to continue if people want to do that.
Okay. Peter?
I think we go home, do some homework before we discuss it.
Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Joe? Do you want to?
I've heard enough that my mind is made up and I just don't think that the awful truth is that there are some things in life where you have to go with the flow and it has to be done by a group, and this is one of them.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Jill?
Go off and paddle our own canoe doesn't make any sense.
I've made up my mind, but if y'all want to keep discussing tonight, or, I can go either way.
I'm going to pull rank and postpone it. Sorry, folks, but I have too many questions I haven't been able to answer in my own mind. And my research I did this afternoon didn't get me far enough to feel comfortable with a motion either way, so my vote wouldn't really reflect what I might really think. So,
With that in mind, then I'd like to request, or for you to request on behalf of the committee, 2 points of information. One, Mr. Phones, you started off your remarks by highlighting the additional cost. So I'd like to know, maybe we can set the parameters at a 4-bedroom, 2,500 square foot house, if we can get some estimation of the additional cost. We heard from Andy that most or some of the affordable housing units that have been produced lately do meet this stretch code. So we know that it can be done at a number that the Affordable Housing Trust or whomever's writing the checks believes is affordable. So we know that, but let's get numbers to what is the marginal cost. And then maybe Andy, if you could produce for us the carbon accountancy of a HERS rated house, the same house at 2 different numbers, approximately how much in operational cost is somebody going to save, or throw out the cost and say, how much more or less carbon is going to be used. If
Andy, are you able to do that for us? Would that be okay?
Absolutely. I can do both those things.
Okay,
Is that to include a calculation of the downstream carbon as well as the
Yeah,
on-site
without
carbon?
credits netted out or anything like that.
And as complete a picture as can be provided, I think is the request.
You're not counting the cost of putting in electricity is a lot cheaper than putting in gas. So how do you value that?
those are one
Not
time
the
costs
equipment.
though.
Well, it's significant enough. I mean, that's why they use electricity in most of the.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about the whole picture. If there's, greater insulation requirements, that's gotta be included. If the appliances are less expensive, that's gotta be included. So, the whole picture.
So if you're talking about the low income housing part where you hit the 45s, those were all electric.
Yeah,
That's
right.
one of the
So,
main
and-
things here is
and
this
I-
island using all electric.
Right, and I've been hearing that it's all gonna be electric and, I gotta find out that date if I'm gonna remodel the kitchen, cause I wanna keep it gas. So that's an important thing, but no, seriously, like if, and a lot of the discussions about all electric houses. And then it sounds like everybody's preference, most of the people who spoke tonight said that they'd like some sort of a hybrid house, which sounds like is still possible. For certain designed homes and certain size homes, so that's good to know, but we gotta pick some baseline, so I'm saying 2,500 square feet, 4 bedrooms. How much more does it cost to build new, and how much more does it cost to operate? Both in terms of dollars and carbon.
And against the current stretch code and against what would have been the base code had we not adopted the stretch code.
And can we add to the study the continued cost of service and reliability?
I don't know how you can project service and reliability, right? I mean, I honestly don't know. But like, if people are not available to service the machines, then we can't even ascribe a cost to it.
We haven't talked about Geo yet. There you go, that's all.
Okay, don't.
I'm just saying, that's another one to add for the next meeting.
Twice.
I wanna bring that up.
Yeah, well, I mean, now to your point, like 2030, you alluded to something, probably nobody else around this table, except for you three, probably know what that means. But we will be back here before 2030. I'm quite certain of it, and we can
Well-
discuss what those requirements are at a later date.
We're trying to get to 2050.
Sounds like we're trying to get to 2021.
We're getting to
So-
2030 by next year. We're trying to get.
Stephen, can I ask
We're
you
way
to
ahead.
work together with John and Andy and make sure that when they both create numbers, that they both agree with each other's numbers to kind of sense check them, because no
Yeah.
offense to either one, but you know, I could write down numbers and nobody would believe them, so. And I'm thinking back to when you did the stuff with Tobias and Rick, and that was quite helpful, so.
Yeah.
Can I now?
I'd be willing to collaborate with Mr. Phones as his HERS rater to do that hard work and to do that study without
Yeah.
question.
I think we can keep it professional, absolutely.
Yeah, and Stephen Maury will be your point of contact,
In
Andy,
other
for
words,
that.
leave Denise out of it.
Leave-
Don't
yeah.
see Denise. Yeah.
So, Vince, but, yes, Vince, do you want to be part of that too? We can have a little fun.
Yes, and for very specific reasons. I have to extend extreme and sincere thanks to Andy for offering to do this and point out to the commission that he's a private citizen who's offering to take this on to help out with this effort and understand what's needed to be done. And I'm extremely happy to also work with Andy in any capacity to find a way to help out on this as well and facilitate from the town side. But we have to understand some of the parameters as well. And we are talking pretty much about the building envelope here and not any outdoor additional luxury items like pools,
Correct.
gas grills,
Correct.
or
Just the building, just try
the
to,
building.
kind of simple,
Exterior luxury items are tough.
or all foods, yes. So just the, as Stephen said, a 2,500 square foot house, with 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, no, I'm just kidding. Okay, oh, you know, you can all sit down and say, here's what we've costed, so here's here's what it looks like, and here's what it costs, and, you know, just something.
Now, I'll pick a real house and we'll have floor plans to it, and, you know, we'll maybe even one, Andy, that you've done a HERS rating for recently, so we know what we're talking about.
Look at that, Stephen's already jumping on this, I love that.
When I built my house, my architect gave me a choice, do you have a basement or gas heat?
Okay, okay, everybody,
Same price.
thank you, Andy, thank you very, very much. Vince, Lisa, thank you for being here. It's been quite an eye-opening conversation, and I will work with Maria to get it back on the schedule, and we'll let you know when it is, and we look forward to seeing all of you again. So, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We are, our next,
Appreciate your time.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm assuming there's no more discussion of any other warrant articles. I'm gonna skip that. Our next meeting is a week from today, Thursday, February 22nd. We have a pretty big agenda for that day, so we will not be adding anything else into that. I'm going to skip committee reports as well tonight. If somebody has something they want to add urgently. Nope, okay, great. Then I'm skipping other business and going straight to a motion for adjournment. Second, thank you. Okay, Joe? Joe? Aye?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jill?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
And Peter?
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a week.